listen carefully. Because if this lands the way it's supposed to, something in you is going to get uncomfortable. Not inspired. Not hyped. Uncomfortable. And that's how you'll know it's working. You've been told that anger is something to manage. Anxiety is something to soothe, and weakness is something to heal. You've been told to be gentle with yourself, to understand yourself, to wait until you feel ready. You've been told that one day it will click. One day you'll wake up stronger, calmer, more confident, more in control. That day isn't coming, not because you're broken, not because you're incapable, but because that entire way of thinking is a lie designed to keep you passive, dependent, and waiting. Waiting for clarity, waiting for motivation, waiting for permission. Waiting for rescue? Nobody is coming. Let that sit for a moment. Nobody is coming to regulate your emotions for you. Nobody is coming to carry the weight you keep avoiding. Nobody is coming to save you from your own mind. And the longer you pretend otherwise, the longer you stay exactly where you are. Angry, anxious, weak. Not because life is unfair. Not because you've been unlucky. But because you've been outsourcing responsibility for your internal state. And that ends here. This is not about becoming emotionless. This is not about suppressing what you feel. This is about something far more serious and far more demanding. This is about becoming the kind of person who does not collapse under internal pressure. The kind of person who can feel anger without being controlled by it. Anxiety without obeying it. Fatigue without surrendering to it. Strength is not the absence of struggle. Strength is the refusal to negotiate with excuses. Right now, if you're honest, your inner world is running you. Your reactions decide your actions. Your moods decide your discipline. Your comfort decides your standards. You tell yourself stories about why today wasn't the day. Why tomorrow will be better. Why now isn't the right time. Those stories feel reasonable. They feel justified. They feel human. They are also the reason nothing changes. Anger doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from resistance. From expectations not being met. From reality refusing to cooperate with the version of life you think you deserve. Anxiety doesn't come from danger. It comes from a lack of trust in yourself. A quiet belief that when pressure hits, you won't hold. Weakness doesn't come from failure. It comes from repeated avoidance, repeated compromise, repeated self-betrayal. Every time you say later when you know it should be now, teach your nervous system that you can't be trusted. Every time you quit because it feels heavy, you reinforce the identity of someone who folds under pressure. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you strengthen the part of you that panics when things get hard. This is not psychology. This is not theory. This is cause and effect. You don't feel weak by accident. You train weakness. You don't feel anxious randomly. You practice hesitation. You don't stay angry because of the world. You stay angry because you refuse to accept responsibility for your responses that might offend you. Good offense is often the first. Crack in denial. You've been trying to feel better. Instead of trying to become stronger, you've been chasing relief instead of capacity. You've been asking, how do I calm down? Instead of how do I raise my tolerance for discomfort? Calm is not something you find. It's something you earn by becoming unshakable. Right now, your emotions have leverage over you. They decide when you show up and when you disappear. They decide when you push and when you retreat. They decide when you speak and when you stay silent. And as long as that remains true, you will never feel consistently powerful. Because power begins where emotional obedience ends. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. That's not discipline. That's willpower, and willpower burns out fast. Discipline is identity alignment. It's the moment you decide that your feelings are no longer the highest authority in your life. It's when action becomes non-negotiable, regardless of internal weather. You don't wait until you feel ready. You act, and readiness follows. You don't wait until fear disappears. You move forward, and fear learns it doesn't get a vote. You don't wait for confidence. You build evidence through consistent behavior. Confidence has no choice but to show up later. This is the part nobody likes to hear. There is no emotional state that will save you. There is no mindset trick that will override a lack of discipline. There is no insight that replaces repetition. You don't think your way out of weakness. You behave your way out. Your mind is not confused. It's undisciplined. It has learned that if it generates enough discomfort, you'll back off. So it keeps doing it. Anxiety spikes because it works. Anger flares because it gives you an excuse to disengage. Exhaustion screams because it knows you'll listen. You've been rewarding the wrong signals. Every time discomfort appears and you retreat, you reinforce the loop. Every time you push through without drama, without negotiation, without self-pity, you break it. Strength is trained in silence. No one applauds the moment you don't quit. No one sees the internal battle where you choose to keep going anyway. No one rewards you immediately for staying consistent when results are invisible. That's why so few people do it. They want validation before transformation. They want proof before effort. They want certainty before commitment, but the order is fixed. You move first. Life responds later. This audiobook is not here to make you feel better. It's here to make you better. That means you're going to hear things that remove your excuses instead of comforting them. You're going to be asked to stop blaming your past, your circumstances, your mood, your trauma, your lack of motivation. Not because those things aren't real, but because they are irrelevant to the standard you are capable of meeting. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your habits. And right now, your habits are teaching your nervous system that discomfort equals danger, effort equals threat, and stillness equals safety. That's backwards. Safety is competence. Safety is capacity. Safety is knowing you can handle what's coming because you've handled worse on purpose. The goal is not to eliminate anger. It's to make it powerless. The goal is not to erase anxiety. It's to outgrow it. The goal is not to feel strong. It's to become reliable under pressure. This requires a fundamental shift. You stop asking how to avoid pain, and you start asking how to increase your tolerance for it. You stop negotiating with resistance, and you start overriding it with action. You stop identifying with your internal noise. You start identifying with your standards. Standards change everything. When your standard is comfort, any challenge feels like a threat. When your standard is discipline, challenge feels expected. When your standard is consistency, motivation becomes irrelevant. When your standard is ownership, blame has nowhere to live. Right now, your life reflects the standards you enforce when no one is watching, and that's not an insult. That's an invitation, because standards are chosen. And what you choose from this point forward determines who you become. This is the beginning of a harder path, a quieter path, a path where you stop talking about what you're going to do and start doing it regardless of how you feel. A path where emotional storms no longer dictate your direction. A path where you build a kind of inner gravity that nothing external can shake. You don't need more information. You need fewer negotiations with yourself. You don't need to feel different. You need to act differently. And in the next part, we're going to strip away the most dangerous habit you have right now. The habit that keeps you stuck in cycles of anger, anxiety, and weakness, without you even realizing it. The habit of waiting. Right now, in this exact moment, you're waiting for something. You might not even be conscious of it, but you are. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel calmer. Waiting to feel more confident. Waiting for the right mood, the right timing, the right sign that says now is safe. That waiting feels harmless. Responsible, even. It feels like patience. It feels like self-awareness. It feels like you're being smart instead of reckless. It's none of those things. Waiting is avoidance. Waiting the mask of wisdom. It is the most socially acceptable form of weakness. Because it looks reasonable while it quietly erodes your ability to act. Every time you wait for a feeling before you move, you teach your brain a dangerous rule. Action is conditional. Effort is optional. Discomfort must be resolved before progress can begin. That rule becomes a cage. You don't feel anxious because life is uncertain. You feel anxious because you've trained yourself to hesitate. You don't feel weak because you lack potential. You feel weak because your nervous system has learned that resistance means stop. You don't feel angry because things go wrong. You feel angry because reality keeps exposing the gap between who you think you are and what you are. Consistently, waiting widens that gap. The hardest truth you're going to hear in this entire audiobook is this: readiness is a myth. It does not precede action. It follows it. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It is a byproduct. Calm is not something you arrive at before you begin. It is something that shows up after you've proven to yourself that you don't quit when it's uncomfortable, but you've been living as if the opposite is true. You wake up and scan your internal state like it's a control panel. Am I motivated enough? Am I calm enough? Am I focused enough? And if the answer is no, you postpone. You delay. You negotiate. You tell yourself you'll do it later when you're in a better headspace. That headspace never arrives. Not because you're broken, but because your brain is responding exactly as it's been trained to respond. It has learned that discomfort leads to delay, not action. That uncertainty leads to pause, not progress. That emotional noise leads to retreat, not resolve, so it produces more noise. Anxiety escalates when hesitation works. Anger sharpens when avoidance is rewarded. Fatigue deepens when it becomes an excuse. Your mind is not attacking you. It's following a script you wrote through repetition. And now you're living inside it. Waiting feels safe because it postpones responsibility. As long as you're waiting, you don't have to risk failure. You don't have to confront your limits. You don't have to find out whether you're actually capable or just full of intentions. But safety is not strength, and avoidance is not peace. The calm you get from waiting is fragile. It shatters the moment pressure shows up. The confidence you build in comfort evaporates the moment something challenges you. The self-trust you think you have disappears the moment things don't go according to plan. That's why you feel unstable. That's why your emotions swing hard. That's why small disruptions feel overwhelming. You've built your inner world on conditions that rarely exist. Real stability is unconditional. It comes from knowing that no matter how you feel, you will act in alignment with your standards. It comes from evidence, from showing up on bad days, from executing when motivation is dead, from moving forward while your mind is screaming for relief. That kind of stability cannot be imagined. It must be earned. Waiting is also how you lie to yourself without technically lying. You say you care. You say it matters. You say you're committed. You're just not ready yet. You're just working through some things. You're just waiting for the right time. Time doesn't make you ready. Pressured as capability is forged in friction. Calm is built in chaos. Confidence grows in environments where quitting would be easier, but you've been trying to remove friction instead of training inside it. You've been trying to control your environment instead of strengthening your response. You've been rearranging your life to protect your feelings. Instead of disciplining your behavior, that strategy feels compassionate. It feels modern. It feels psychologically informed. It also guarantees fragility. Strong people are not people who feel good all the time. They are people who function well when they don't. They don't wait for clarity. They generate it through movement. They don't wait for certainty. They build trust by doing what they said they would do, regardless of mood. Ask yourself something honestly. How many times have you delayed a decision because you didn't feel ready, only to realize later that nothing changed except more time passed? How many times have you postponed effort waiting for motivation, only to feel worse the longer you waited? How many opportunities have quietly died while you were preparing to begin? Waiting doesn't keep options open. It closes them. Every day you hesitate, you strengthen the habit of hesitation. Every day you delay, you reinforce the identity of someone who does not act under pressure. Every day you choose comfort over commitment, you make discomfort louder next time. This is why anxiety feeds on indecision. This is why anger grows when life doesn't cooperate. This is why weakness feels heavier the longer. Avoid testing yourself. Your nervous system is begging for proof that you can handle life. Waiting starves it of that proof. You don't need to feel safe to move. You need to move to feel safe. The moment you act without permission from your emotions, something shifts. Not dramatically, not magically. Quietly. Your mind takes note. It registers that discomfort did not kill you. That fear did not win. That resistance did not stop you. That note matters because your brain updates based on behavior, not intention. It learns from what you do, not what you plan. And when you repeatedly act in the presence of discomfort, anxiety loses its authority. Anger loses its leverage. Weakness loses its story. But this only happens if you stop waiting. Waiting is seductive because it promises control. It tells you that if you just get things right internally, life will cooperate externally. That if you just manage your emotions better, you'll finally be able to move forward without friction. That's a fantasy. Friction is the cost of forward motion. Discomfort is the price of growth. Uncertainty is the entry fee for any meaningful change. You either pay it up front with discipline, or you pay it later with regret. This is where responsibility becomes non-negotiable. You stop asking how to feel ready and start asking what needs to be done. You stop checking in with your emotions for approval and start checking in with your standards for direction. You stop giving yourself infinite time and start acting as if today matters. Because it does. Your life is not defined by what you plan to do. It's defined by what you repeatedly execute when it's inconvenient. And right now, the most important execution is this. Acting without waiting for internal permission. You don't need to conquer your emotions. You need to outrank them. They can speak. They can protest. They can scream. But they do not decide. That authority belongs to you. In the next part, we're going to confront the source of your anger more directly. Not the surface irritation, not the explosive moments, but the quiet resentment that builds when you know you're capable of more and keep choosing less. That resentment is dangerous. Left unchecked, it turns inward. It poisons motivation. It corrodes self-respect, and it only dissolves through ownership. There is a specific kind of anger that doesn't explode outward. It doesn't shout. It doesn't break things. It sits low in the chest, tight, persistent, quietly, corrosive. That's the anger you carry. It shows up when things don't go your way. When people disappoint you, when progress feels slow, when life refuses to match the effort you think you've put in, you tell yourself it's justified, logical, earned. But that anger isn't about them. It's about you. Anger is not strength. It is the signal that something inside you knows the truth, and you've been avoiding it. The truth that you are not fully owning your life. The truth that you are holding expectations without matching responsibility. The truth that part of you knows you're capable of more. And you keep choosing less because it's easier in the moment. Anger is what happens when responsibility is deferred. When you expect outcomes without accepting the cost. When you want respect without consistency. When you want peace without discipline. When you want results without surrendering comfort. Every time reality refuses to cooperate with those expectations. Anger fills the gap. You think you're angry at circumstances, at people, at systems, at timing, but beneath that is a deeper frustration. The frustration of knowing you could be stronger, steadier, more composed and not becoming that person. Anger thrives where accountability is incomplete. Look closely at the moments you lose control. They're rarely about the surface issue. They're about a loss of power. A reminder that something external still has leverage over you. That your internal state is still reactive. That your sense of control is fragile. That realization hurts. So the mind converts it into anger. Anger feels powerful, but it's borrowed power. It creates the illusion of strength while avoiding the work of actually becoming strong. It gives you something to blame so you don't have to confront the harder question. Where did I abdicate responsibility? This is why anger is addictive. It temporarily restores a sense of agency without requiring change. It lets you feel justified without being disciplined. right without being accountable. But the cost is steep. The more you indulge anger, the less resilient you become. The more easily triggered. The more dependent on external stability to feel okay, the more fragile your sense of self-control becomes. Calm people are not passive. They are people who have accepted responsibility so deeply that very little surprises them. When you expect difficulty, it doesn't offend you. When you expect resistance, it doesn't anger you. When you expect imperfection, it doesn't destabilize you. Anger fades when expectations align with reality. Right now, part of your anger comes from entitlement you don't want to admit you have. The entitlement to ease, to fairness, to progress without sustained discomfort, to recognition without obscurity, to growth without boredom, to strength without repetition. You may reject that word. Entitlement. It sounds harsh, accusatory, but entitlement doesn't always look arrogant. Sometimes it looks like frustration, like burnout, like I've done enough. Why isn't this working? Like, why is this still hard? Like, I shouldn't have to deal with this. That internal dialogue reveals a misalignment. Life does not respond to what you think should be happening. It responds to what you repeatedly do. When effort is inconsistent, results are inconsistent. When discipline is conditional, stability is fragile. When responsibility is partial, resentment grows. Anger is resentment looking for a target. You don't need anger management. You need expectation management. And that starts with radical ownership. Ownership means you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this demanding from me? It means you stop expecting life to meet you where you are and start meeting life where it is. It means you stop measuring fairness and start measuring effectiveness. Strong people do not ask if something is fair. They ask if they can handle it, and then they make sure the answer is yes. Anger dissolves. When you accept that difficulty is not an interruption of your life, it is the substance of it. Resistance is not a sign you're off track. It's confirmation that you're engaging with something meaningful. When you internalize that, frustration loses its grip. You stop being shocked by obstacles. You stop being offended by inconvenience. You stop wasting energy wishing things were easier. You redirect that energy into execution. This is the shift. From emotional reaction to operational focus. From personalizing difficulty to using it. From venting to building capacity. Capacity changes everything. When your capacity is low, small problems feel huge. When your capacity is high, large problems feel manageable. Capacity is not confidence. It is competence under stress. It is built through exposure, not avoidance. Every time you avoid responsibility, you shrink capacity. Every time you step into it, even imperfectly, you expand it. Anger tells you where you've been avoiding. Pay attention to it. Not as an excuse, but as data. What are you angry about right now? Where does life feel unfair? Where do you feel stuck, blocked, restrained? Now ask the harder question. Where have you been hoping for change without committing to the process required to produce it? Where have you been wanting relief instead of responsibility? This is not about self-blame. Blame is useless. This is about self-command. Blame keeps you stuck in the past. Command moves you forward. You cannot control outcomes. You can control standards. You can control effort. You can control consistency. You can control how you respond when things don't go your way. That control is enough. Anger fades when you stop arguing with reality. When you stop insisting that things should be different and start acting as if they are exactly as they need to be to shape you. That doesn't mean accepting mediocrity. It means accepting the work. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are doing what needs to be done regardless of emotional turbulence. That confidence is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not need validation. It is felt internally as steadiness. That steadiness is what replaces anger, but it requires a decision, a clean one. You decide that you will no longer use anger as a substitute for action. You will no longer use frustration as a reason to disengage. You will no longer use resentment as a shield against responsibility. When anger rises, you don't suppress it. You redirect it. You ask, what needs to be handled? And then you handle it. Over time, anger learns it has no leverage. In the next part, we're going to confront anxiety. Not as a disorder, not as a flaw, but as a predictable response to living without internal authority. We're going to strip it down to its core and rebuild the kind of trust in yourself that makes anxiety unnecessary. Because anxiety is not fear of the future. It is doubt about your ability to face it. Anxiety doesn't come from the future. It comes from uncertainty about who you'll be when the future arrives. That tightness in your chest. That restless scanning of possibilities, that constant sense that something might go wrong, none of it is about what's coming. It's about a quiet, often unspoken doubt. Will I handle it? If you trusted the answer was yes, anxiety would have no job. Anxiety is not a malfunction. It is a warning system doing exactly what it was designed to do. It flares up when the mind senses a gap between demands and capacity. When life feels bigger than the version of you that's currently showing up, you don't eliminate anxiety by calming thoughts. You eliminate it by closing that gap. Right now, part of you knows you've been inconsistent. You've made promises to yourself and broken them. You've set standards and quietly lowered them. You've avoided things that scared you and told yourself you were being patient or strategic. Your nervous system remembers all of that. It doesn't care about your explanations. It cares about patterns. And the pattern it has learned is this. When pressure increases, you might hesitate. When discomfort rises, you might retreat. When things get hard, you might look for an exit. That pattern creates anxiety. Anxiety is the cost of unreliability. Specifically, unreliability to yourself. Every time you say you'll do something and don't, you weaken self-trust. Every time you choose short-term relief over long-term standards, you erode internal credibility. And when the future approaches with uncertainty, your mind asks the only question that matters. Can I count on you? If the honest answer is sometimes, anxiety steps in. This is why reassurance doesn't work. You can tell yourself everything will be okay 1,000 times. But if your behavior doesn't support that belief, your body won't accept it. The nervous system doesn't respond to affirmations. It responds to evidence. Evidence is built through follow-through. You don't become calm by convincing yourself you're capable. You become calm by proving it through repeated action under stress. This is where most people get trapped. They try to manage anxiety at the level of thought. They analyze it. They label it. They try to soothe it. They build elaborate mental frameworks to understand it. And it keeps coming back because the root cause hasn't changed. Anxiety is reduced when uncertainty about your own response is reduced. And that only happens when your actions become predictable, not to others. To yourself, predictability is not boring. It is stabilizing. When you know that you show up whether you feel like it or not, uncertainty decreases. When you know that you act according to standards instead of moods, fear loses its grip. When you know that discomfort doesn't change your behavior, the future stops feeling threatening. You're not anxious because you care too much. You're anxious because you haven't yet become someone you trust under pressure. That is not an insult. It is a direction. Self-trust is built the same way trust with others is built. Through consistency, through doing what you said you would do, through reliability over time, through actions that align with words. You wouldn't trust someone who constantly broke commitments, then asked you to believe in them anyway. Yet that's exactly what you ask of yourself, and you're nervous. System says no, so it stays alert, hypervigilant, tense, always preparing for failure, because it doesn't know whether you'll step up when it counts. The solution is not to eliminate fear. Fear is normal. The solution is to make fear irrelevant by becoming dependable. This requires a shift in focus. You stop trying to feel calm and start trying to be solid. You stop monitoring your anxiety levels and start monitoring your follow-through. You stop asking, how do I make this feeling go away? And start asking, what standard am I not enforcing? Standards calm the nervous system. When your life has structure, anxiety decreases. When your days have non-negotiables, uncertainty shrinks. When your behavior is governed by principles instead of impulses, your mind can relax because it knows what's coming. Chaos creates anxiety. Discipline resolves it. This does not mean rigidity. It means clarity. You know what you do, no matter what. You know what? You don't negotiate. You know what gets done, even when motivation is gone? That clarity is calming right now. Too many decisions are being made in the moment based on how you feel. That keeps your nervous system on edge. It never knows what version of you is going to show up. The disciplined version, the tired version, the distracted version, the avoidant version. Uncertainty breeds anxiety. When you remove choice from critical actions, anxiety decreases. When you decide in advance who you are and how you act, your mind no longer has to debate every step. Debate is exhausting. This is why routines matter. Not because they're productive, but because they reduce internal conflict. They conserve mental energy. They create predictability. Predictability creates peace. But here's the part people resist. Building that predictability requires doing things when you don't feel like it. Repeatedly. Without emotional reward. Without immediate results, you don't wait for anxiety to subside before acting. You act, and anxiety learns that it doesn't stop you. At first, anxiety will get louder. It always does when it's losing control. It will present worst-case scenarios. It will question your timing. It will suggest waiting just a little longer. That's the test. If you act anyway, something important happens. Your nervous system updates its model of you. It learns that discomfort does not equal danger. That uncertainty does not equal collapse. That pressure does not equal failure. With each repetition, anxiety loses credibility. Not because the future becomes predictable, but because you do. This is how calm is built. Quietly, gradually, through hundreds of small acts of integrity no one sees. You don't become fearless. You become steady, and steadiness is stronger than fearlessness. In the next part, we're going to address weakness. Not physical weakness. Internal weakness. The kind that shows up as quitting. Procrastinating, numbing, distracting, and slowly lowering your standards till life feels small. We're going to talk about why comfort is the most dangerous addiction you have and how to break it. Weakness is not a lack of strength. It is an overcommitment to comfort. That's the part nobody wants to hear, because comfort feels harmless. Earned, deserved, it feels like self-care. Like balance. Like you're being reasonable in a hard world, but comfort, when protected long enough, becomes a prison. You didn't become weak overnight. You became weak slowly, quietly, through small decisions that felt insignificant in the moment. Skipping the hard thing because today was long, choosing distraction because focus felt heavy, letting standards slide because one time won't matter. One time always matters. Weakness is trained the same way strength is trained. Through repetition, through habit, through what you do when no one is watching and nothing is forcing you. Right now, your life has too many exits, too many escape hatches, too many ways to avoid pressure without consequence. And every time you take one, your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Your nervous system adapts to what you expose it to. Expose it to ease, and it becomes fragile. Expose it to challenge, and it becomes resilient. You are not tired because life is too demanding. You are tired because you've been avoiding demand. Avoidance drains energy. Discipline creates it. This is one of the great misunderstandings. People think rest restores them. It doesn't. Purpose does. Movement does. Momentum does. The sense that you are progressing towards something difficult and meaningful. Comfort without effort is exhausting. That's why endless scrolling leaves you numb. That's why constant entertainment makes you restless. That's why doing nothing never actually makes you feel better. Your system was built for exertion, for effort, for friction. When you deny it that, it turns inward. You feel flat, weak, unmotivated, like something is missing. What's missing is resistance. Weakness shows up as procrastination, not because the task is hard, but because you've trained yourself to flinch at discomfort. It shows up as distraction because focus has become unfamiliar. It shows up as self-doubt because you haven't been testing yourself consistently enough to build evidence. You don't need more confidence. You need more exposure to hard things without quitting. Strength is not dramatic. It's boring. It's doing the same difficult things again and again. Long after the novelty is gone and before results are visible, weak people chase intensity. Strong people commit to consistency. Comfort teaches you to avoid pain. Strength teaches you to tolerate it. Mastery teaches you to use it. Right now, your comfort zone is too large. It has expanded to include behaviors that quietly erode your standards. You call it downtime. You call it recovery. You call it balance. But balance without discipline tilts toward decay. You don't rise to comfort. You sink into it. This is why weakness feels sticky. Once you start organizing your life around avoiding discomfort, everything begins to feel uncomfortable. Small challenges feel big. Simple tasks feel heavy. Minor setbacks feel overwhelming. Your capacity shrinks. The solution is not to punish yourself. It's to reintroduce voluntary hardship. Voluntary hardship is the antidote to weakness. When you choose difficulty on purpose, you reverse the pattern. You teach your nervous system that discomfort is survivable. That effort is normal. That resistance is not a threat. Physical exertion. Saying no when it would be easier to say yes. Staying when leaving would feel better. These are not acts of self-denial. They are acts of self-respect. You cannot build a strong identity while constantly choosing the easier option. Identity is shaped by what you do when you have a choice, and you always have a choice. Weakness tells you to wait until you feel like it. Strength moves without asking permission. Weakness looks for relief. Strength looks for alignment. Weakness negotiates. Strength executes. This is where discipline becomes non-negotiable. Discipline is not punishment. It is structure that protects your future self from your present impulses. It is the bridge between who you are now and who you know you're capable of being without discipline. Your life will always be at the mercy of how you feel that day. With discipline, feelings become background noise. You don't need to eliminate comfort entirely. You need to earn it. Earned comfort restores. Unearned comfort corrodes. There is a deep satisfaction that comes from rest after effort, from stillness after strain, from ease after execution. That satisfaction is clean. It doesn't leave residue. It doesn't make you weaker. But when comfort comes first, it steals something from you. It dulls your edge. It lowers your standards. It makes effort feel optional. That's the danger. You don't break weakness by thinking differently. You break it by acting differently. By doing things that feel slightly uncomfortable every day. By choosing the harder option when it aligns with your values. By removing unnecessary escapes. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. Consistency compounds. Weakness compounds too. Every small act of discipline is a vote for a stronger identity. Every time you override the urge to quit, you deposit trust into your system. Every time you stay focused when distraction is available, you sharpen your capacity. This doesn't feel good at first. It feels heavy, awkward, unnatural. That's because you're untrained. Strength always feels unnatural at the beginning. So does calm. So does discipline. But over time, comfort shifts. What once felt hard becomes normal. What once felt uncomfortable becomes expected. What once felt impossible becomes routine, and weakness has nowhere left to hide. In the next part, we're going to talk about focus. Not productivity tricks. Not hacks. Focus as a moral choice. Focus as a form of self-respect in a world designed to fracture your attention and dilute your will, because distraction is not accidental. And if you don't take control of your focus, something else will. Your life feels scattered because your attention is scattered. Your energy feels thin because it's being divided. Your progress feels slow because nothing has your full weight behind it. Focus is not about intelligence. It's not about talent. It's not even about time. Focus is about restraint. It's about the ability to say no to everything that doesn't matter so you can say yes to what does right now. You live in a world that is aggressively hostile to focus. Noise is constant. Distraction is engineered. Every system around you is designed to fragment your attention, pull you out of the present, and keep you reactive instead of deliberate. And if you don't actively resist that, you don't just lose productivity. You lose agency. A distracted mind is an easily controlled mind. Focus is power because it allows depth. And depth is where real change happens. Surface effort produces surface results. Deep work produces transformation. But depth requires something most people avoid: boredom, stillness, and sustained discomfort. Distraction offers relief from all three. It gives you stimulation instead of satisfaction, novelty instead of progress, activity instead of achievement. And it feels good in the moment. That's why it's dangerous. Every time you reach for distraction, instead of staying with the task, you weaken your ability to tolerate focus. Every time you break concentration to chase something easier, you reinforce impatience. Over time, your mind becomes restless, irritable, unable to sit with anything long enough to matter. Then you call it anxiety, or burnout, or lack of motivation. But it's mostly untrained focus. You don't lack drive. You lack containment. Containment is the ability to hold your attention in one place despite internal resistance. It's a muscle, and like any muscle, it atrophies when it's not used. The result is a life of half-ferts, half-finished projects, half-formed ideas, half-lived days. You feel busy but ineffective, occupied but unsatisfied. Focus changes that when you focus deeply on something meaningful, time slows, noise fades, anxiety quiets. Not because problems disappear, because your attention is no longer splintered across 100 trivial inputs. A focused mind is a calm mind. But calm doesn't come from removing difficulty. It comes from eliminating internal conflict. Internal conflict is what happens when part of you wants to do the work and part of you wants to escape it. Distraction feeds that conflict. Focus resolves it by choosing a side. This is where discipline becomes visible. You don't need more tools. You need fewer options, fewer tabs, fewer notifications, fewer commitments that don't align with your priorities. Focus requires subtraction. Every yes costs you something: time, energy, attention. And when you say yes indiscriminately, you dilute yourself. Strong people are selective, not because they are better, but because they are clear. Clarity comes from knowing what matters enough to suffer for, because everything meaningful requires suffering of some kind. The suffering of boredom, of repetition, of delayed gratification, of sustained effort without applause. Distraction promises relief from that suffering, but it also steals the reward. You cannot feel fulfilled by something you never fully engage with. Focus is not intensity. It's continuity. It's showing up to the same thing again and again, long after the excitement is gone. That's where mastery lives. And mastery is deeply calming. When you are good at something, uncertainty shrinks. When you have skill, fear decreases. When you have depth, you don't need constant stimulation. Your confidence stops being performative, becomes quiet. This is why focus is a form of self-respect. It's you deciding that your life deserves depth, not distraction. That your time is too valuable to be scattered. That your attention is not for sale. Every time you choose focus, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you resist distraction, you strengthen your capacity for presence, and presence is the foundation of strength. A present person is hard to manipulate, hard to rush, hard to destabilize. Distraction makes you reactive. Focus makes you deliberate. This is not about becoming a monk. It's about choosing where your attention goes, instead of letting it be pulled. You don't need to eliminate distraction entirely. You need to stop letting it decide for you. Decide in advance when you focus and on what. Decide what gets your best energy and what gets what's left. Decide what matters enough to protect. Protection is discipline. Your focus should be guarded like something precious. Because it is, the quality of your attention determines the quality of your life. Shallow attention produces shallow results. Deep attention produces depth in everything it touches. You don't find focus. You enforce it, and enforcement requires saying no. No to unnecessary noise. No to constant availability. No to the urge to escape when things get uncomfortable. At first, focus will feel claustrophobic. Your mind will resist. It will itch for novelty. It will try to convince you that you're missing out. You're not. You're building something in the next part. We're going to talk about persistence. Not the glamorous kind. The quiet, uncelebrated persistence that carries you through long stretches where nothing seems to be working and quitting feels reasonable, because this is where most people stop. And this is where everything is decided. There will be a moment quiet, ordinary, unremarkable, and quitting makes perfect sense. No crisis. No collapse. Just a subtle exhaustion. A thought that slips in calmly and sounds reasonable. This isn't working. This shouldn't be this hard. Maybe this isn't for me. I've done enough. That moment is the dividing line, not between success and failure. Between those who build strength and those who explain why they didn't, persistence is not dramatic. It doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't announce itself. Most of the time, it feels dull, heavy, repetitive, like pushing against something that isn't moving. That's why so few people have it. Motivation is loud but unreliable. It comes and goes. It spikes with novelty and disappears with resistance. If motivation is what carries you, you will only move when things feel good. Persistence carries you when nothing feels good, and that's the point. The most dangerous phase of any process is the middle, not the beginning where energy is high, not the end where results are visible. The middle where effort continues and feedback disappears, no validation, no confirmation, no clear signal that what you're doing is working, just work. This is where weakness starts bargaining. It doesn't demand that you quit outright. It suggests adjustment, a break, a pause, a reassessment. It tells you you've earned rest before you've earned results. Persistence means you don't listen, not because rest is bad, but because timing matters. Rest that is taken to recover is different from rest that is taken to escape. You know the difference. Persistence is the refusal to turn temporary discomfort into permanent retreat. It is staying when leaving would feel better. It is continuing when the story in your head says stopping would be reasonable. Reasonable is not the same as right. Your emotions are very good at making quitting sound intelligent. They present evidence. Fatigue, slow progress, past failures, lack of recognition. They build a case, and the case is convincing. But persistence doesn't argue. It doesn't justify. It doesn't negotiate. It executes. The reason persistence builds such deep strength is because it creates identity under pressure. Anyone can show up when things are exciting. Anyone can push when results are immediate. Who are you when nothing is happening? That answer matters. Your nervous system is always watching how you respond to stagnation. Do you hold the line, or do you loosen standards the moment reinforcement disappears? That response teaches it what kind of person you are. When you persist even quietly, something fundamental shifts. You stop needing encouragement. You stop requiring evidence. You stop waiting for proof that it's worth it. You become process-driven, process-driven. People are dangerous in the best way. They don't need to feel good to function. They don't need momentum to move. They don't need applause to continue. They trust the process because they are the process. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is alignment. It is the calm decision to keep going because you've already decided who you are and what you do. Quitting always feels like relief at first. That's why it's tempting. But relief is short-lived. It turns into regret, and regret is heavier than effort. Effort ends when the task ends. Regret lingers. Every time you push through a moment where quitting felt justified, you harden something inside you. Not in a bitter way. In a stable way, you become less reactive, less emotional, less dependent on circumstance. You don't become numb. You become grounded. Persistence builds internal gravity. Things stop pulling you off course so easily. Opinions matter less. Setbacks don't shake you as much. Delays don't destabilize you, because you've seen yourself continue without reward. That is powerful. This is also why persistence feels lonely. There is often no external feedback during the most important stretches. No one notices. No one comments. No one cares. That's not a flaw. That's a filter. If you require recognition to continue, you are still externally governed. Persistence removes that dependency. It teaches you to derive stability from alignment, not validation. You are not doing this to be seen. You are doing this to become solid, and solidity changes everything. When you know you don't quit, anxiety weakens. When you know you continue under pressure, anger loses leverage. When you know you can endure boredom, discomfort, and slow progress, weakness has no argument left. Persistence is proof, not to the world, to yourself, and once you have that proof, you move differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently, not with arrogance. With quiet certainty, in the next part, we're going to talk about the final shift. The moment where you stop fighting yourself and start trusting the process, even when results are invisible, because this is where strength becomes permanent. There is a stretch of time that breaks most people, not because it's painful, not because it's chaotic, but because it's silent. You're doing the work. You're staying consistent. You're showing up when you said you would, and nothing seems to be changing. No visible results. No external confirmation. No clear sign that your effort is landing anywhere meaningful. This is where doubt gets sophisticated. It doesn't attack you emotionally. It questions you logically. It asks if this is efficient, if this is smart, if this is worth it. It points out the lack of evidence and calls itself realism. But that doubt is not wisdom. It is impatience wearing intelligence. Every meaningful process has a delay built into it, a gap between input and outcome, between discipline and visible return, between effort and proof. That gap is not a mistake. It is the test. If results were immediate, discipline would be easy. If progress were obvious, persistence would be common. If growth announced itself, everyone would commit. But it doesn't. Strength is built in the dark. Calm is forged before it's felt. Mastery is developing long before it's visible, and most people quit right before the internal. Change becomes external. You don't see the internal restructuring happening. The nervous system adapting, the standards solidifying, the identity shifting. But it is happening quietly. This is why trusting the process is not passive. It is an active choice to continue without reassurance, to keep executing without feedback, to move forward without emotional payoff. That requires maturity. Immature effort needs constant reward. Mature effort understands lag. Right now, you may feel like you're putting in work without return, like your discipline is going unnoticed, like your restraint is unrowered. Good, that's exactly where irreversible change happens. Because when you keep going without reinforcement, you stop being outcome dependent. You stop tying your behavior to immediate validation. You stop letting progress dictate your commitment. You become anchored. Anchored people don't drift when conditions change. They don't collapse when results slow. They don't abandon the process when enthusiasm fades. They trust what they're building because they understand how building works. Every repetition is shaping you, whether you feel it or not. Every disciplined choice is altering your baseline. Every moment you choose standards over comfort, you're becoming someone different. That change will surface later, but only if you don't interrupt it. Most people sabotage themselves here. Not dramatically, subtly. They loosen standards just a little. Skip just a bit more often. Justify small compromises. Tell themselves they've earned flexibility, and the process stalls. Not because they failed, but because consistency was broken before compounding could take over. Compounding is invisible at first. That's why it's ignored. But once it shows up, it's undeniable. You don't notice the moment you become calmer. Others do. You don't feel the exact moment you become stronger. Life does. You don't see the day you become resilient. Pressure reveals it. Trusting the process means you stop auditing results daily and start auditing behavior. Did I show up? Did I execute? Did I honor my standards? If the answer is yes, the day counts. Even if nothing else happens. Especially if nothing else happens. This is where patience becomes power. Not passive patience. Active patience. The patience to keep doing the work without demanding proof. Demanding proof too early is insecurity. Consistency without proof is confidence in action. You don't need to know when it will pay off. You need to know that you don't quit before it does. That's the deal. Life rewards those who don't require immediate confirmation, because they are the ones who don't flinch. Don't pivot constantly. Don't abandon foundations halfway built. Trusting the process does not mean blind faith. It means informed commitment. You understand that change lags behavior. You understand that identity changes before outcomes. You understand that strength is built internally first, so you keep going. Even when it feels flat. Even when it feels slow. Even when nothing seems to be happening, something is happening. You are becoming predictable to yourself, reliable, solid, and that solidity will eventually express itself in every area of your life.com becomes your default. Not because life is easier, but because you are stronger. Anxiety loses its grip. Not because the future is safe, but because you are capable. Weakness fades. Not because challenges disappear, but because you don't. In the final part, we're going to bring everything together, not as theory, as identity, the kind of person you are now becoming, and the standard you will no longer drop. This is where the conversation stops being motivational and becomes permanent. This is where everything comes together, not in a dramatic way, not with a surge of emotion or a sense of arrival, but with a quiet decision that settles deep and stays there. You are done negotiating with yourself, not because life got easier, not because you finally feel ready, but because you understand something now that you didn't before. Every time you negotiate your standards, you fracture your strength. Every time you make exceptions for comfort, you weaken your authority over your own life. Strength is not built by intensity. It is built by standards you do not break. This is the difference between change that lasts and change that fades. Motivation fades. Emotion fades. Circumstances shift. But standards remain if you enforce them. A standard is not a goal. Goals are conditional. They depend on outcomes. A standard is a line you don't cross, regardless of outcome. You don't act because you feel like it. You act because that's who you are. You don't show up because it's rewarding. You show up because it's required. You don't stay consistent because it's easy. You stay consistent because it's non-negotiable. That mindset ends anger, anxiety, and weakness at the root. Anger disappears when you stop expecting life to bend and start bending yourself with discipline. Anxiety fades when you trust your response more than you fear uncertainty. Weakness dissolves when quitting is no longer an option you entertain. This is not about being harsh. It's about being clear. Clear standards reduce internal conflict. When you know what you do no matter what, there is nothing to debate. Debate creates friction. Clarity creates calm. You don't waste energy arguing with yourself anymore. You don't spiral. You don't hesitate. You execute. That execution becomes your identity. And identity is powerful. When you see yourself as someone who follows through, you don't need to force discipline. Discipline becomes alignment, When you see yourself as someone who handles pressure, stress loses its threat. When you see yourself as someone who does not quit, fear has no leverage. This is how inner strength becomes permanent, not through effort alone, but through self-definition. You decide who you are, and then you live in a way that makes that decision true. This does not mean perfection. It means ownership. When you fall short, you correct without drama. No shame, no stories, no self-pity. Just adjustment and return to the standard. That ability to reset quickly and continue is real strength. You no longer measure progress by how you feel. You measure it by how reliably you act. Feelings become background noise. Information, not instruction. You don't eliminate emotion. You subordinate it. Anger becomes energy, not reaction. Anxiety becomes awareness, not paralysis. Fatigue becomes feedback, not an excuse. You are not calm because nothing is wrong. You are calm because nothing inside you is in conflict. This is the quiet confidence few people ever reach. Not loud, not performative, not in need of validation. It shows up as steadiness, as presence, as the ability to stay composed when others unravel, as the refusal to be pulled into chaos, distraction, or excuse. This is the kind of person who moves forward even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Because now you understand the truth that changes everything. Nobody is coming to save you, and you don't need them to. You are capable of regulating yourself, of disciplining yourself, of directing your life with intention instead of reaction. You don't need motivation. You have standards. You don't need certainty. You have capacity. You don't need comfort. You have purpose. From this point forward, life will still be hard. There will still be resistance, still uncertainty, still long stretches where effort feels unrewarded. But you will be different inside those moments, calmer, stronger, more deliberate. You will not rush. You will not panic. You will not quit. You will do what needs to be done, again and again and again. Not because it feels good, but because it's who you are now. And once that identity locks in, anger loses its fuel. Anxiety loses its voice. Weakness loses its grip. You don't need to feel powerful. You are